Join me on Nightmare Truth, where all the stories you are about to hear are true.
Story 1. Have you ever had a premonition? One of those moments where you think or dream about something that feels so real it makes your stomach tumble. A moment where you feel like someone is going to die or a disaster is imminent, and then it comes true. Don't worry, you're not alone. We are about to delve into some of the most nightmarish premonitions that have come to fruition over the years. I had a premonition about some of you watching this episode of Nightmare Truth, and I know some of you will be shocked by some of the stories I'm about to tell you. It was the 5th of April 1936. In Gainesville, in the southeastern area of the US of A. It was the early hours of the morning. Mary Hudgens Evans was fast asleep next to her husband. She was having a restless sleep when her dead mother visited her in her dream. Her mother looked at her. She appeared distant and only said one thing to Mary. She said,
"I'm coming for you."
Mary woke up in a cold sweat. The dream was so vivid, so real. In the morning, Mary told her husband about the dream and told him to prepare himself. She knew something was going to happen but wasn't sure what or when. She asked him to look after their 3-year-old daughter. She then kissed her daughter for what she felt may be the last time. Her husband humored her, but as we know, her premonition was going to have a profound impact on their lives. Mary Hudgens Evans went to work as she usually did at the Wright's ice cream parlor. That morning, not one, but 2 of the deadliest tornadoes in U.S. history came from either side of Gainesville, destroying everything in its path and eventually merging together. Around 10 minutes before the Uber tornado arrived, Mary phoned her husband and once more told him she loved him and she loves her daughter and to make sure they look out for one another. The tornado would go on to claim over 400 lives, and sadly Mary's deceased mother, it would seem, had let her know she was going to die, so she could say her final goodbyes to her husband and daughter. Sadly, Mary Hudgens Evans was killed by the tornado that very tragic day. Story 2. It was February the 26th, 1993. Barrett Naylor was a stockbroker who worked at the World Trade Center in New York City. The night before he'd had a good night's sleep, he got up nice and early ready to broker some deals and do a lot of fist pumping. He finished his breakfast and was ready to rock. Off to work he went. He boarded his usual train. He felt carefree. Then when he got off at Central Station, suddenly he felt incredibly ill. His heart started beating faster and he felt an incredible ache in his stomach. He could not shake it. There was no way he could work like this, he thought. He got back on the train and returned home. That very afternoon, 2 terrorists drove a van carrying a bomb into the public car park beneath the World Trade Center and detonated it. 6 people died and over 1,000 people were seriously injured. Barrett Naylor's literal gut instinct saved his life that day. Yet there's more. Nearly 20 years later, Barrett Naylor once again was getting ready for a productive day at work in the Trade Center. Once again he got on the train and departed at Central Station. And once again, he got that incredible ache in his stomach. He felt like retching. His temperature rose, so he thought, stuff this. I feel sick, and got a train back home. That day was September the 11th, 2001. An horrific terrorist attack on the World Trade Center occurred. 2 jets were deliberately flown into the Twin Towers, causing the collapse of the 2 buildings. Close to 3,000 people lost their lives that day, a day that shocked the world. For some strange reason, Barrett Naylor had once again had that feeling, that premonition if you will, where he was so sick he just had to go back home, and on both days, a terrorist attack was perpetrated on the World Trade Center. The premonition saved his life once again. Story 3. Sharon Tate was a Hollywood actress hoping to make it big in the movie industry. She'd appeared in films such as The Fearless Vampire Killers and Valley of the Dolls, for which she was nominated for a Golden Globe. In 1968, Sharon Tate did an interview for Fate magazine. She was asked if she'd ever had a psychic experience. She stated she had, about a year before. She had been staying at friend and celebrity hairstylist Jay Sebring's house. Tate was in a deep sleep when she suddenly awoke to see who she thought was a ghost of Paul Byrne, a movie director who had committed suicide in that very house in 1932. She then went downstairs, but not before passing the tied-up bodies of Jay Sebring and herself with their throats slit. She got herself a glass of water, then went back upstairs and passed the dead bodies and straight back to bed. Now we've all had gruesome nightmares, scary for some, wet dreams for others, and whilst they frighten us or made a haunting impression on our minds. That's it, nothing more. But not in this case, for on the 8th of August 1969, Sharon Tate had friends Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, and Wojciech Frykowski around the house for dinner. That fateful night, 4 members of the Charles Manson family, a murderous, depraved cult, went to the house and got inside. They tied the 4 terrified victims up. Sharon Tate, who was 8.5 months pregnant at the time, and Jay Sebring were tied together. They were then stabbed several times over and died from fatal stab wounds. The murders shocked the world. Did Sharon Tate have a dark premonition about her own demise? Story 4. Oscar Pistorius is a former South African sprinter who has won medals in the Olympics and the Paralympics. It was a great shock to the world when he was arrested for murder on the 14th of February 2013, Valentine's Day. That wasn't a bed of roses, sadly, for his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp. On that dark day, both Oscar Pistorius and Riva Steenkamp were at his home. It was late. Riva Steenkamp was in the bathroom. The door was shut. Suddenly, there were 4 shots fired from a gun by Oscar Pistorius. The ammunition he used was black Talon ammo, which opens on impact and causes more damage. Riva Steenkamp received shots to the body and a fatal one to the head. Oscar Pistorius claimed he woke up and thought there was an intruder in the bathroom, so fired the weapon. His story had suspect flaws in it, and he was eventually found guilty of murder. Riva Steenkamp was just 29 years old when she was murdered. It was revealed by her parents that Riva, a budding artist with some degree of talent, it's fair to say, painted this picture when she was just 14 years old, 15 years before her death. Take a long, hard look at the painting. At the time, her parents couldn't really understand why she painted such a chilling and unusual picture. It displays a man in a field. He is holding a gun. In the painting, there is also an angel looking distressed standing near a stairway to heaven. Riva's parents now believe this was a premonition painted by their then 14-year-old daughter. Could it be so? It is rather eerie and prophetic. What do you think? Story 5. It was October of 1966, in Aberfan, a Welsh posh mining town in Wales, United Kingdom. Mai Jones was a sweet 10-year-old girl who had just awoken from a slumber. She ran downstairs to get ready for school. Her mother was rushing around too. The school morning rush was always frantic. Mai Jones told her mother about a dream she'd had.
I dreamed I went to school and there was no school there, Mum. Something black had come down all over it,
said Earl as she quickly had her breakfast. Her mother listened but didn't read too much into it. Then Earl said to her mom,
I'm not afraid to die, Mum.
Her mother thought what an odd thing for her 10-year-old daughter to say. She told her to stop being silly. Earl shrugged her shoulders.
Don't worry, Mum,
said Earl.
I'll be with Peter and Jane.
Peter and Jane were two of her friends from school. Her mother tried not to think too much of it. Their village was placed at the foot of a mountain, where sat perched on top of the mountain was tons of coal waste, a deadly mixture of coal waste and shale. A few of the village residents had raised valid concerns over this potentially dangerous coal waste, for it may one day come tumbling down. Uriel's mother thought Earl must have overheard some of the residents talking about this, and this may have played on her mind as she lay in bed, dreaming. Sadly for poor Mai Jones and her family, her devastating premonition was to come true for Aberfan and its residents. Just a few days after Earl's dream on October 21, 1966, she had gone into school. At around 9:15, whilst the children were being registered for attendance, the coal waste broke away from the mountain and headed at around 21 miles per hour towards Aberfan. Parts of the village was destroyed. Panclas Junior School, which Uris was attending, was the worst hit. The sludge crashed through the classrooms, filling up the rooms. It took many lives. 109 school children sadly died. Poor 10-year-old Mai Jones was one of these tragic school children. Her body was found next to her friends Peter and June, just like it happened in her dream. May she rest in peace, little angel. Story 6. I'm sure most, if not all of you, have heard of Edgar Allan Poe, a master storyteller who has written some of the most macabre and influential stories of all time. If you've never read an Edgar Allan Poe tale, then I implore you to do so. He's a fantastic writer. Enough of the adulation. You want to know why he is mentioned in this episode of Nightmare Truth about dark premonitions? Well, hold on to your feather quills, for this is one of the most disturbing and unusual premonitions you will ever hear. In 1838, Poe published a novel titled The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym. It recounts the tale of 4 men shipwrecked and stranded in the ocean aboard a lifeboat. The men suffer with dehydration and hunger, having only ate a tiny sea turtle between the 4 of them. They become delirious and things soon take a more sinister turn. They all decide they must cannibalize one of the survivors. They draw straws, and one of the men, named Richard Parker, unfortunately for him, maybe not so much for the others, draws the short straw. Richard Parker is then stabbed to death, and the rest of the stranded ocean floaters proceed to eat him so they can survive a while longer. Extremely gruesome indeed. But it was just a novel, a work of fiction. That is until 1884, almost 50 years after Poe's novel was published. These horrifying sequence of events occurred, and the similarities are uncanny. 4 men set sail aboard a yacht called the Mignonet from Southampton, England to Sydney, Australia, a good 13,000 nautical miles or so. A large freak wave wrecked the Mignonet, and the men quickly abandoned ship. It sank within 5 minutes, The men were now floating aimlessly aboard a lifeboat 700 miles from the nearest plot of land. Several days went by and the men had eaten nothing other than a piece of turnip. And just like Poe's story, they too also ate a sea turtle. With the poor soul who was eaten, in the Poe story named Richard Parker, and one of the men aboard the real-life stranded lifeboat also called Richard Parker. Well, you surely know where this is going. It was decided the crew had to eat somebody to stay alive, and Richard Parker, just like in the novel, was the poor man who was cannibalized. He was stabbed in the jugular and quickly eaten so he still tasted fresh and warm. Richard Parker, just like his fictional counterpart, was cannibalized too. Strange but true. Bon appetit.
Did you lock your door? Sleep tight.